The house is quiet now. It is a specific kind of quiet that only arrives in the later movements of a life, not the temporary silence of a household asleep, but the heavy, settled stillness of a space that has finished gathering. You sit in your favorite chair, watching a single shaft of late afternoon sunlight cut across the floorboards, illuminating dust motes that drift aimlessly in the warm air. On the wall across from you hangs a framed photograph from 30 years ago. In it, faces are laughing, hands are raised in mid-gesture, the air practically vibrates with noise, ambition, and the frantic urgency of a life being built. You look at that photograph, and then you look down at your own hands resting on the armrest. They are different hands now. They are thinner, the skin mapped with veins that trace the long geography of everything you have survived. And in this quiet moment, a realization settles into your chest, heavy and uninvited. It is not the fear of death. It is not the ache of a failing joint or the fading of youth. It is something far more profound, something that no one ever warns you about when you are young. The hardest part of growing older is the silent realization that you have become a ghost in your own life, watching the world you built move forward without needing you to hold it up. For decades, your identity was forged in the fires of necessity. You were the pillar. You were the provider, the fixer, the protector. The anchor around which the chaos of family, career, and community revolved. Your phone rang because people needed answers. Your door was knocked on because people needed strength. You woke up every morning with a weight on your shoulders, and though you may have complained about the burden then, that very weight was what kept your feet firmly planted on the earth. It told you exactly who you were. It told you that you mattered. Then imperceptibly at first, the tide began to recede. The children grew up and built anchors of their own. The career that once consumed your waking thoughts became a chapter in a closed book. The fast-paced world outside your window began to speak a language you didn't quite recognize, moving at a speed that felt less like progress and more like frantic motion. One day you look around and discover that the heavy machinery of your life has been turned off. The silence that follows is deafening. You are no longer the central character in the drama. You have been moved to the audience. You are watching the play go on, and the actors are doing just fine without you. This is the great, unspoken threshold of the later years. It is the transition from being needed by the world to being left alone with yourself. It is a profound existential vertigo. When the world stops asking things of you, you are forced to confront the one question you spent a lifetime avoiding: who are you when you have nothing left to manage, nothing left to fix, and no one left to rescue? We spend the first half of our lives accumulating. We gather titles, possessions, relationships, and obligations like a traveler packing a heavy crate for a long voyage. We measure our worth by the volume of our commitments. If our calendar is full, we must be important. If people depend on us, our existence must be justified. We mistake the noise of being busy for the music of being alive. But aging is an uncompromising master. It does not ask for your permission. It simply begins the slow, deliberate process of subtraction. It strips away the titles first. The business card that used to introduce you becomes a relic of a past era. Then it subtracts the physical vitality, the effortless strength you took for granted, the assumption that your body would always obey your command without question. Then, most painfully, it begins to subtract the presence of those who knew you when you were young. The friends who shared your history. The partners who bore witness to your struggles, the parents who held your early memories one by one, they slip into the shadows, leaving behind gaps in your life that cannot be filled by anyone new. The temptation in this season of subtraction is to grieve the losses so deeply that you miss the quiet miracle of what remains. It is easy to fall into a bitter resentment, to look at the younger generation with a sense of alienation, to view their speed and self-sufficiency as a personal rejection. You see them rushing past you, staring into small glowing screens, building lives that seem entirely detached from the truths you spent decades learning, and you feel an icy wave of irrelevance. You want to call out to them. You want to say, "Listen to me. I have been where you are going. I know how this ends." But they do not ask. And they do not listen. Not because they are cruel, but because they are caught in the same current that once carried you. They are in the accumulation phase of their own lives. They must make their own mistakes, carry their own weights, and run until they run out of breath just as you did. To demand that they stop and acknowledge your wisdom is to demand that the river flow backward. It is an act of defiance against the natural order of things, and like all acts of defiance against nature, it yields nothing but exhaustion and heartbreak. The true challenge of these years, the hidden test of your character, is to learn how to sit in this thinning air without losing your dignity. It is to find a way to stand before the mirror, stripped of your societal utility, and still say this life has value. I have value. Consider the trees in the depth of autumn. They do not cling desperately to their leaves as the frost approaches. They do not mourn the green canopy that defined them during the long days of summer. They do not scream at the wind for stripping them bare. They understand, through some ancient silent intelligence, that the letting go is necessary for their survival. They know that if they tried to hold onto every leaf through the heavy snows of winter, the weight would break their branches. They allow themselves to become bare, exposing their true architecture to the cold sky. They look dead to the casual observer, but beneath the frozen soil their roots are deep, alive, and resting. They have withdrawn their energy from the surface and pulled it back to the core. As human beings, we are terrible at autumn. We want eternal summer. We want to keep blooming, keep producing, keep holding onto the foliage long after the season has changed. When our leaves begin to fall, we experience it as a tragedy rather than a transition. We try to manufacture artificial summers. We throw ourselves into trivial distractions. We obsess over the preservation of our physical appearance. Or we meddle in the lives of our adult children, trying to force ourselves into stories where we are no longer required. We do this because the alternative feels terrifying. The alternative requires us to look into the emptiness. But the emptiness is not a void of despair, it is a space of profound freedom. Think of the immense relief that is hidden within your irrelevance. When the world no longer looks to you for answers, you are finally free from the burden of having to know everything. When people stop demanding your time, you are finally given ownership of your hours. For 70 years, your time belonged to your employers, your children, your bills, and your ambitions. Now the day stretches before you like an unblemished canvas. The question is no longer what must I do today. The question is how shall I be today. This shift from doing to being is the narrow gate through which every wise elder must pass. It requires a radical reimagining of what success looks like. Success in youth is expansive. It is measured by what you conquer, what you build, and what you display. Success in old age is intensive. It is measured by your capacity to sit quietly in a room with your own mind and find peace there. It is measured by the gentleness of your gaze, the depth of your acceptance, and the absence of malice or regret in your heart. If you can make this shift, the ghostliness ceases to feel like a haunting. It begins to feel like a state of grace. You become like a visitor in a beautiful museum, observing the bustling gallery of life with a detached, appreciative eye. You see the young couples arguing in the park over things that will not matter in 5 years, and instead of judgment, you feel a profound, aching tenderness for them. You see the ambitious professionals rushing to their offices, faces tense with anxiety, and you feel a quiet gratitude that you are no longer on that wheel. You begin to see the world not through the lens of what you can get from it, or what you can do to it, but simply as a magnificent, fleeting spectacle that you are privileged to witness. The mind, however, is a restless creature. When it is emptied of external problems to solve, it frequently turns inward and begins to hunt through the past. This is where the real danger of the quiet years lies. In the silence of your house, old ghosts will come to find you. Regret will knock on the door, holding a ledger of every mistake you ever made, every word you wish you could take back, and every path you chose not to walk. You will remember the temper you lost with a child who is now an adult with their own scars. You will remember the love you took for granted, the marriages that foundered, the friendships that withered through neglect. You will look back at your younger self with a fierce, burning judgment, wondering how you could have been so blind, so selfish, so foolish. It is easy to spend the final chapters of your life rewriting the earlier ones in your head, trapped in an endless loop of if only. If only I had stayed. If only I had left. If only I had said what I really felt. If only I had worked less. If only I had been braver. But this is an illusion born of a fundamental misunderstanding of time. You are judging a confused, embattled soldier in the middle of a war using the perspective of a general sitting in a peaceful study 30 years later. The person who made those mistakes was not the person you are today. They were operating with limited sight, carrying unspoken traumas, reacting to pressures you have long since forgot. They were doing the best they could with the broken tools they possessed at the time. To punish them now from the safe harbor of your old age is an act of cruelty, not justice. You must grant amnesty to your past self. You must look back at that younger, struggling version of you and offer them the same forgiveness you would offer to a stranger's child who stumbled in the dark. They had to make those mistakes so that you could sit in this chair today with the wisdom to recognize them as mistakes. The regret you feel is not a sign of your worthlessness. It is the definitive proof of your growth. It means you are no longer the person who caused the harm. The wound has turned into wisdom. Let the ledger go. The past is not an anchor meant to hold you captive in the harbor of remorse. It is a school from which you have already graduated. You cannot change a single line of the script. The only power you possess over your history is the power to choose how you look at it today, whether with a closed fist of bitterness or an open palm of acceptance. There is a distinct beauty that belongs exclusively to things that are coming to an end. We do not look at a sunset and weep because the light will be gone in an hour. We do not demand that the orange and purple hues freeze in the sky forever. We watch it with a heightened, breathless attention precisely because it is fleeting. Its beauty is inseparable from its transience. Yet when it comes to our own lives, we forget this truth. We treat the approach of the evening as a failure, a tragic decline to be resisted with every ounce of our remaining energy. But what if the fading of the light is exactly what gives the remaining hours their true value? When you are 20, you think you have an infinite supply of currency in the bank of time. You spend your days carelessly, wasting hours on trivial arguments, worrying about what strangers think of you, chasing illusions of status and prestige. You can't afford to be reckless because the horizon seems infinitely distant. When you are 70, the currency is visibly running low. You can see the bottom of the vault. And far from making life miserable, this realization can make life breathtakingly beautiful. Suddenly, you no longer have time to waste on bitterness. You no longer have the energy to hold onto old grudges. You realize how absurd it is to spend your precious, dwindling days being angry at a brother who offended you 20 years ago, or feeling resentful about a promotion you didn't get in 1994. The scale of your values changes completely. The small things become the large things. The taste of a morning cup of coffee, the cool texture of clean sheets, the sound of a bird outside your window, the brief warm touch of a loved one's hand, these are no longer background noise to a busy life. They are the lives. They are the jewels you have uncovered after digging through decades of dirt. You begin to cultivate a profound form of self-respect that youth can never understand. It is the dignity of someone who has nothing left to prove to anyone. You do not need to impress the neighbors with a new car. You do not need to win arguments to feel important. You do not need to conform to the expectations of a society that has largely forgot you anyway. You are finally free to be exactly who you are without apology. If you want to sit in silence for 3 hours, you sit in silence. If you want to speak your mind with absolute, unvarnished honesty, you speak your mind. The marginalization that felt like a curse at first reveals itself to be your ultimate liberation. The world has let you go, which means you are finally free to belong entirely to yourself. Look out at the world again. Watch the generations that follow you. They are running so fast. They are building their empires, fighting their battles, weeping over losses that feel like the end of the world to them. Do not look down on them with condescension, and do not look at them with envy. Look at them with the deep, quiet love of an old traveler who has returned from the destination they are all trying to reach. You know the secret now. You know that the empire they are building will eventually become a ruin, just as yours did. You know that the things they are weeping over will pass like clouds on a summer afternoon. You know that the noise they are chasing will eventually dissolve into the same silence that fills your living room right now. This knowledge is your gift to the world, even if the world isn't ready to receive it in words. You do not need to preach it. You do not need to write a book or give a speech. You teach it simply by the way you carry yourself through the remaining days. You teach it by your stillness. You teach it by your lack of fear. You teach it by the smile that plays on your lips when others are panicked, a smile born not of cruelty but of a vast, oceanic perspective that understands that everything passes, that everything is taken away, and that everything in some mysterious way is exactly as it should be. The hardest part of growing older is the loneliness of becoming a ghost. But the most beautiful part of growing older is realizing that the ghost is finally free to enjoy the house. So let the afternoon light fade. Let the shadows lengthen across the floorboards. Do not reach for the light switch just yet. Sit in the gathering dark without fear. You have run the race. You have carried the weight. You have paid your dues to the world of noise. The silence that surrounds you now is not an empty house. It is a sanctuary. Enter it with your head held high, your heart open, and your soul at peace. You are at home. The night deepens and the room becomes a landscape of shadows. The familiar shapes of your furniture, the bookshelf crammed with volumes you may never reread. The desk where you once signed papers of immense temporary importance blur into the dark. In this space, the passage of hours loses its sharp, mechanical edge. Time is no longer an dictator shouting commands from a wristwatch. It flows around you like a deep, slow-moving river, indifferent and absolute. Sitting here, you realize that the ghostliness we fear is not a subtraction of life, but an initiation into its deepest mystery. When you were young, you looked at the elderly through the distorting lens of distance. You saw the slowed gait, the silver hair, the quiet disposition, and you assumed that the interior life must have slowed down as well. You thought that as the body weakened, the spirit withered into a state of passive resignation. But now that you are inside this skin, you know the exquisite truth. The fire has not gone out, it has merely changed its fuel. It no longer burns with the smoky, volatile fuel of ambition, lust, and anger. It burns with the clear, white heat of pure awareness. Behind your quiet eyes, an entire universe is alive. You carry inside you the 5-year-old child who fell and scraped their knee on a summer afternoon. You carry the fierce, idealistic 20-year-old who thought they could reshape the world. You carry the exhausted parent holding a feverish infant at 3 in the morning. You carry every version of yourself you have ever been. They have not vanished. They are all here, woven into the fabric of your soul, resting within the monument of your survival. This is the great wealth of old age that the young can never steal and can never understand. They possess the currency of the future, but you possess the architecture of the past. They have potential, but you have reality. Every scar on your body, every wrinkle around your eyes, is a medal won in a campaign they have yet to fight. You have crossed the oceans they are still staring at from the shore. You have stood in their ruins of things you thought would last forever, and you have discovered that you were stronger than the destruction. With this realization comes a profound shift in how you view the people around you, especially those you love. When we are caught in the frantic middle chapters of life, our relationships are often transactional, even when we love deeply. We look at our partners, our children, our friends through the lens of expectation. We need them to be certain things, to behave in certain ways, to fulfill certain roles so that our own lives feel secure. We get angry when they fail us, we feel anxious when they change, and we spend vast amounts of energy trying to mold them into shapes that fit our desires. In the thinning air of the later years, that grip naturally loosens. You look at your adult child now, perhaps struggling with their own marriage or drowning in the demands of their career. In the past, your instinct would have been to rush in to offer unsolicited advice, to worry yourself into sleepless nights, to feel a sense of personal failure in their struggles. But now you see them with the clarity of a long view. You realize that their struggles are not an emergency to be fixed. They are the very crucible in which their own wisdom must be forged. You cannot protect them from the winter of life any more than anyone could protect you. To try to shield them from suffering is to rob them of their destiny. Your love changes from a desperate, clutching hand into a wide, open shelter. You no longer need them to achieve anything to make you proud. You no longer need them to visit you out of obligation to make you feel validated. You simply love them for the miracle of their existence. You look at them and think, I brought you into this world, I gave you what I had, and now your life belongs to you. Go live it. This claim, detached love is the highest form of human affection. It is entirely free from selfishness. It asks for nothing in return, not even attention. It is like the sun, which shines on the earth simply because it is its nature to shine, indifferent to whether anyone looks up to thank it. When you can love your family, your friends, and the world with this lack of demand, you become a source of immense, radiating peace. People will feel it when they enter your presence. They won't know why, but they will feel a sudden lowering of their internal shields. In a world that is constantly screaming at them to perform, to be more, to go faster, they will find in you a rare, sacred clearing where they are allowed to simply be. And what of the final threshold? What of the silence that does not break? As the body grows older, the mind naturally begins to contemplate its own departure. In our youth-obsessed culture, this contemplation is treated as a symptom of depression or morbid fixations. We are told to fight aging at every turn, to think positive, to distract ourselves, until the very last moment so we never have to face the ending. But the old masters of wisdom knew that remembering your mortality is not an act of despair. It is the ultimate act of liberation. When you are no longer afraid of the end, the world loses its power to terrify you. You cannot be blackmailed by the fear of loss when you have already accepted that everything must be given back. You cannot be intimidated by the opinions of others when you know that both you and your critics will soon be nothing but dust blowing across a forgot field. Mortality is the great filter that strips away everything that is false, leaving behind only that which is real. It is the wind that blows away the chaff of vanity, leaving the pure grain of truth. You begin to see your life not as a permanent fortress you must defend with your life, but as a beautiful, temporary lease on a magnificent estate. You do not own the trees, the sky, or the house. You were simply invited to stay here for a brief, glorious afternoon. And as the evening comes, it is only natural to pack your small bag, look around the rooms with a heart overflowing with gratitude, and hand the keys back to the owner. You realize that your individual story was never the point. The point was the grand tapestry of life itself, of which you were a single, beautifully colored thread. The thread will eventually end, but the tapestry continues, unfolding into eternity, vast, mysterious, and perfect. The grandfather clock in the hall chimes, its slow, deep resonance vibrating through the floorboards. It is late. The world outside is asleep, wrapped in the dark, waiting for a dawn that you will see, and that one day you will not. But there is no fear in this room. There is no bitterness. There is no desperate reaching back for things that have already flown away. You lean back into the cushions of your chair. You close your eyes, and you listen to the steady, quiet rhythm of your own breath. In and out. Each breath a gift. Each breath a small miracle. Each breath a reminder that you are still here, a conscious witness to the majesty of existence. You have walked through the fire of the middle years and emerged on the other side, stripped of the noise, but clothed in dignity. You have accepted the subtraction. You have forgiven the past. You have let go of the world's demands, and you have allowed yourself to become the wise, quiet ghost who knows how to inhabit the house with grace. Let the world run its frantic race. Let the young build their cities and chase their shadows. You are exactly where you belong. You have arrived at the summit of the long mountain, and the view from here is vast, silent, and beautiful.